Sonal Patney is a corporate and investment banker, has worked at many well-regarded international and domestic banks, and a consultant, having also worked on many short-term assignments in debt and equity capital markets, with early-stage disruptive technology companies, middle market, and large corporate companies across diverse sectors, and on political consulting in Minnesota. Most notably, she is a graduate of Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs and New York University, holding an MPA with a concentration in international economic policy and a BA in political science, respectively. Now also a writer, she launches her book entitled How Should We Think About Debt Capital Markets Today? ESG's Effect on DCM, in collaboration with Eurobox. We're glad to welcome Sonal, who's right now connected with us on Conoscere TV. Hi, Sonal, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Hi, Genevera, and thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here with you.
So, first things first, let's start by introducing the book. What is it about and how is it structured?
Sure. Well, the book is very much about debt capital markets and ESG, which is known more commonly as sustainable finance lending. It's a very important subject matter, I felt, nowadays, and that was primarily my reason for writing it. The book is essentially discusses investment grade debt financings and leverage financings, given what's happened in the markets in the last 2 to 3 years about. It also discusses Europe and US's commitment on sustainable finance lending, Europe's position in terms of having a green and sustainable finance commitment, and a comparison between what's happened in the capital markets over the years, the various trends that have occurred. Overall, I also talk about various issuers in the market, companies, for example, who were there at the beginning of sustainable finance, starting in Europe and then moving towards the US. In terms of the structure of the book, I would say I think we've done a really good job in having the book structured in a very straightforward manner. The reading might be the writing may be a little complex for some readers, but I think it's structured fairly well. And what I mean by that is the beginning of the book, I talk about there's a wonderful foreword by the CEO of Enel, one of the largest utility companies in Italy. And he talks about the commitment to sustainable finance lending and the role of energy. And then there is a preface by me, which talks about why the book came to be and how the book came to be for many of the readers. The middle of the book is very much about ESG-linked debt, various forms of ESG-linked debt, whether these are loans or bond products. And then it goes into various trends in the capital markets that originated in Europe, as well as the regulatory parameters of the European Union and the United States and many of the regulatory bodies in the US. And in conclusion, there is a summation or a summary in terms of what the findings of my book were, or the research, the secondary research that I conducted. I also put together 3 very interesting case studies towards the end of the book. And I would highlight and say these companies are known as Enel, Novartis, and Hewlett Packard, some of the very well-regarded companies in the world. The point of the case studies largely was to highlight how these debt financings are being done, what the goals are, and whether the goals would be to reduce greenhouse carbon emissions, or they would be to have a just tech company in the sense of climate change action mitigation, or to address diversity, equity, and inclusion through the tech company's goals of using one of these debt financings, or if it's to meet certain pricing targets in the case of Enel for performance pricing for reducing greenhouse carbon emissions. So essentially, that's how the book is structured. The last thing I would add is we've also included some lovely illustrations and charts which highlight and collaborate with the book and the point of many of the findings in the book. One of the key charts is a world map at the end of the book, which talks about green, social, and sustainability bond issuance. And the numbers were incredible. I was amazed by the data that I discovered, and I think that's what kind of was one of the reasons why the book came to be.
You were very detailed. Thank you, Sonal. I would like also to ask you, what was the inspiration? So let's go back to the origin of the book. When you first felt this need to write it down?
Well, I have to say honestly, there really wasn't one inspiration per se, but while I was writing the book, I came across many people that I was inspired by, and that happens to me often. But my muse per se really was my son, who's just 14 years old. I look at him every day and I think about him every day, and he really was the muse for the book. In addition to that, I think the subject matter is a very inspirational subject matter, and that drove me to writing the book.
What was the challenging part about writing this book? To write a book, it is always a challenge, you know. But in this case, which is also a difficult subject, what was the challenge for you?
Well, I didn't feel like there were very many challenges in writing this book because I felt so strongly about the topic. I felt that it's a very important topic to highlight, and it affects the role. It highlights pretty much the role of the capital markets today. So I wouldn't say there were very many challenges per se, but the one or two challenges I think we came across in terms of the literary work was that it did take some time from signing on with your publishing house, and I think that was to be expected. However, I think the finished product turned out to be so great that I really appreciate the phenomenal cover design. I got many compliments on that. The editing was wonderful, and I think the finished book product just has been so well received that I can't say there are very many challenges. But the last thing I'll add is that in terms of some of the charts and the illustrations in compiling the book, I looked for more updated data, and that was a little bit challenging to find. So I think we have like 2019, 2020, and 2021 maybe, stats in there, but that might have been a little bit of a challenge. Other than that, I think it was a wonderful exercise for me.
Great. We have just the time for one last question. I would like to give you voice of author. So what would you like to tell your readers now that you have the chance to face?
Well, I would say that we're in a very changing world. The world is changing now. And I think in 1998, when I started my career with UBS Investment Bank and investment banking, the world was very different. I don't think many of us realized what sustainable finance lending meant and how important this subject matter was. I would say that I think this subject matter deserves a lot of research, attention, and time. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. And it has also allowed me an opportunity to highlight the role the capital markets are playing today in crucial issues such as climate change, sustainability, diversity, food security, affordable housing. And these are all issues tied to ESG principles that we are addressing through these debt and bank financing. And I would just encourage my readers to read the book, review it, opine on it, do as you think best with the book, but certainly provide feedback on it and enjoy the book.
We want to wish you best luck with the book too, Sonal, and thank you for your time today and this chat.
Grazie mille.
How should we think about debt capital markets today? ESG's Effect on DCM by Sonal Patney is now available in bookstores and digital platforms, a publication by Eurobooks.